All right, folks, welcome back to the C Morning Show right here on C. Today, we're jumping in fast right now to the second discussion of the day in our last hour of our program. Now, we're heading towards the Indonesia Net-Zero Summit 2024, an annual climate conference organized by Foreign Policy Committee of Indonesia, where climate groups, the government, private sectors, civil society, diplomatic corps, academics, media, students, and the public can voice out their aspiration for Indonesia net zero future and climate commitments.
Yes, this year's summit will feature the theme of SOS Neraka Bocor, Climate Avengers Assemble. It was chosen to address the urgency of the Earth's approaching hellish temperature, which passed the 1.5 degrees Celsius tipping point, and emphasized the importance of action and cooperation from climate avengers to prevent disaster and also
I love this theme, by the way. It's very Gen Z.
Yeah.
And for more details on the summit, we're now joined with Foreign Policy Committee of Indonesia Director Esther Tamara in the studio. Good morning, Esther. It is such a great pleasure to have a figure like you coming here to our studio. If you don't mind me, give me another 1 minute to share a bit of your profile. So Esther here actually graduated from University of Massachusetts, Boston, where she attained the GPA 3.7 summa cum laude in May 2019. And also you have your Master in Public Policy from Harvard University. As of current right now, you are the Salada Institute for Climate Sustainability at Harvard University as Student Associate, and also Climate Finance Consultant at Sustainable World Inc. and a consultant at World Bank. Welcome to our studio.
Well,
thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about, it is a very interesting theme, by the way, but we want to know more of the Net Zero Summit of 2024. Can you elaborate more on this?
Yeah, so Indonesia Net-Zero Summit is really a platform that we created in 2021 by FPCI for short, because we want to raise the ambition of Indonesia's climate commitments. You will remember during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk about how we were able to really successfully reduce emissions globally, but that was because cars and transportation all come to a halt.
That's right.
As soon as we open our economy again, the emissions just skyrocketed to a point that every science in the world has clearly stated that we're going to a 2 to 3 degrees Celsius hotter world, right? So we are reaching a tipping point where there is no point of return. And once we reach that, we cannot ever cool back the Earth ever again. So in 2021, the Indonesia Net-Zero Summit was created to platform all of these aspirations from civil societies, all the people that you mentioned earlier, especially the young people, to voice out how can we create a future for Indonesia that is sustainable, that is livable, breathable, and green. And the key to that is to declare Indonesia net zero by 2050, according to the science that has been recommended by science all around the world.
But if we're walking the talk, as of current, right? If we want to achieve that.
We have to do it right now. And right now we're not doing it, right?
Yeah.
So Indonesia has a climate policy where we declare net zero emissions by 2060, or hopefully earlier, but that's 10 years too late. And being 10 years too late is not good, because we have Indonesia Mas 2045, as we all know.
Yeah.
So what kind of Indonesia Mas do we want to live in the future? Is it going to be a hot Indonesia where you can't even breathe the air, where it's scorching hot, right? So the key is to just really rapidly and ambitiously reduce greenhouse gas emissions now, so that we can secure a living future, a livable future for all of us.
So Indonesia Net-Zero Summit is an annual event that you
Correct.
Oh, great. So can you please elaborate more on the progress of the previous summits that you have been holding, and what did you achieve so far from the previous summit?
Yes. So the first summit that we did in 2021 really highlighted Indonesia Mas 2045. At that time, Indonesia has no net zero policy. And thanks to the collective commitment and collective collaboration with the climate community here, we were able to push the government to declare net zero, and now we have the net zero policy 2060. Last year, as we all know, it was a political year. So there was great momentum on how to make climate change part of the electoral discourse. And I would say, in my opinion, although that point was not central to the election, it was part of the discourse, and that is the progress that we wanted to see. So that's why last year we engaged a lot of not only political figures, thought leaders, but especially the think tanks and civil society to voice out what kind of government do we want to have to secure a livable Indonesia in the future. And this year is the continuity of that. Now that the people have chosen who will be the next president and the incoming government administration, this year's summit will focus on what the next government should focus on when it comes to climate policy, energy transition, and climate commitments internationally.
So what you've seen since 2021, since you commenced the Net-Zero Summit 2024, Indonesia Net-Zero Summit 2024, 2021 now coming to 2024, is there any realistic action that has been done? You were mentioned before now, I mean, there is the net zero policy.
Right.
But let's talk about the community itself. I mean, if you're going to talk about government officials or levels, I mean, if there are some changes, but what about the community and the people itself of Indonesia? We know Indonesia is very vast,
Right.
with different kind of skills and different kind of people also.
Yes. I would say that the community has shown this support for an ambitious net zero policy even before the government has started paying attention ambitiously for that. You will recall that in 2022, we had the G20 chairmanship. So there was a great momentum on energy transition towards renewables. And that momentum has been carried on by the civil society leaders, by think tanks and academicians and climate activists up to today. So I would say that this year's summit really want to platform these voices, and which is why we want to make sure that the summit is not only an FPCI initiative, we actually partner with more than 100 climate groups across Indonesia. Whether you're in Jakarta, Java, or outside of Java, you're a part of this event, and all their thoughts and aspirations are poured into the summit, into the talking points, and into the advocacy messages that we wanted to bring. In fact, one of the things that we did leading up to the summit in 24th August is to conduct, various dialogues with President-elect Prabowo's policy team to ensure that coming up to the summit, all the aspirations are captured, whether that's on energy, whether that's on climate policy, or whether that's on climate finance, for example.
Definitely giving awareness to the community and trickle down to the grassroots, right?
Correct.
Because when you want to achieve something in 2050, it has to be a collective action by all of us here in Indonesia.
The spirit of gotong royong, essentially.
right.
Spirit of Gotong Royong, that is it. So let's move on to the agenda of this year's summit. Indonesia Net-Zero Summit 2024, it's been going on since 2021.
Yes, correct.
Right? But for this year's, what is the biggest agenda for this year's summit?
It's preparing the next government and making sure that they are aware of what the climate community and civil society wants to see from them. Of course, there has been tremendous achievements under President Jokowi's leadership. We have the JETP funding, for example. We also declared Net Zero 2060 target or earlier. But in order for Indonesia to play a leading role, not only globally, but even in ASEAN, in the region, you need to go far beyond that, right? So our ask collectively as the summit consortium is for Indonesia to declare net zero by 2050, according to the IPCC and science and where the world is moving right now. Now that aspect itself can be translated into various policies. First, we have to have more ambitious energy transition scheme and roadmap. Second, we need to really implement and adopt the carbon tax policy that has been postponed for several years now, right?
Yes.
And then number three, we need to really ramp up our climate diplomacy so that in order to reach this 1.5 degree world and protect it, all of this have to come together. And this is what we want the President-elect Prabowo's government to really heed, not only listen to, but heed to what civil societies are asking them to do under their leadership.
So, Esther, what do you think that has become a challenge and somewhat to make this all laws to be, or this policy to become a law? Because if you're talking about Indonesia scorching hot, it is currently already scorching hot.
It is already scorching hot,
right?
I agree.
Our rainy days or our rainy season, it's just only a very short period of time. And we're not discussing when climate change is going to come. It is already here.
It is already here.
So then what makes, sometimes for the, the one that really regulates the policy, makes it really kind of difficult to make it into a law?
I would say it's the lack of political will and the leadership to take a brave step towards this new world, the net zero world, right? We have the science, we have the data, we have the evidence. And we know that, of course, Indonesia have this ambition of becoming an upper income country, like a high income country.
Yes.
And we need to ramp up our economic growth to do that. Even the next government, President-elect Prabowo, has a target of 8% GDP growth. But the problem with that is that if we continue the economy right now, business as usual, without integrating renewables, green, and climate considerations, that 8% is not going to be achieved, right? In fact, it has been shown by climate modeling done by WRI, some of them is also included in collaboration with Bappenas. If you don't integrate climate into your policy now, our GDP and economic target by 2045 is going to be only 5.1%. And that's below 8% that we want together.
Yeah.
So it really has to come from the political willingness from the government and the political leadership to see that the sacrifices of short term really makes up for the long-term gains
Yes.
here. Because we're not just talking about Indonesia being, you know, an high economic growth country in the next 5 years. We're talking about how we can even survive the next
sustain
decades
it.
until
Yeah.
2050 and then the years after, right? Yeah.
So I want to talk about again this year's theme. Because
Correct.
it sticks to my ear.
Yes, SOS.
SOS Neraka Bocor, Climate Avengers Assemble.
Assemble.
That's right.
Yes, it seems that the issue is more urgent compared to last year.
Yep.
Right? Could you explain more on the current situation of our climate change, especially in Indonesia?
Yes. Exactly as Carol said earlier, the climate crisis is already here. Last year, Indonesia has seen one of the world's hottest temperature on record, right? So there's a study that has been done that showed, in fact, if we reach a 2 to 3 degree world warmer than it is now, the number of hot days that is above 35 degrees Celsius for Indonesia is going to be at least 1/3 of the year. So for Jakarta, you're going to be experiencing like 35-degree days for at least 100 days in a year.
Oh my
For Medan, it's going to be 150 days. For Palembang, it's even higher.
Yeah.
So imagine if you live your reality like that every single day. So that's the climate crisis that we're already facing now. It's not tomorrow, right? And the theme, SOS Neraka Bocor, is really to illustrate it's a hellish temperature that we're looking at now. It's not just temperature, it's going to be significantly changing the way that we live, the way that we do our, our activities on a day-to-day basis, basically equating it to hell. And we really want to capture the spirit of Gotong Royong. That's why we said Climate Avengers Assemble. You will recall in 2018, President Jokowi also equates himself and his cabinet ministers as Avengers in facing the global economic uncertainties. So now we're asking the next government, President-elect Prabowo and his team, to really embody that spirit of Climate Avengers. Avengers are already there. If we equate climate solutions to a climate avenger, it's already there. Renewables is there, the technology is there, the policy instruments is there. It's just how do we activate it and really make sure that these Avengers work for the collective future of humanity, because we're talking about humans here now. We're not talking about the Earth.
Yeah.
The Earth is still going to be here 100 years from now, but for our own humankind, I don't think we're going to be here unless we do something right now.
That's right, and that is why Indonesia Net-Zero Summit 2024 with its speakers, the Avengers is really assembling on the 24th of August. You have many experts from government officials, private sectors, activists, academics. What about the participant of this year, though?
The participants of this year is, of course, we want to put front and center the participation of young people. We have attracted crowds from last year upwards of 10,000 people, and most of those are SMP kids, high school kids, university kids who are really concerned about their future. And we want to make sure that the conversation at Net-Zero Summit is multi-sectoral. So it's not just government speaking, it's also activists speaking their mind, it's also advocates, it's also politicians. How do we bring these diverse perspectives together and really understanding where each one of us play a role in this collective effort?
Yeah.
So that's the spirit of Net-Zero Summit that we want to bring. This year also, like last year, we will be, again, having the Climate Hero Award. Last year, we had the pleasure of honoring it to Professor Emil Salim. As we all know, he's a national asset. He was our first Minister of Environment. And this year, we have the pleasure of nominating and bestowing the award to Finance Minister Sri Mulyani. So we hope that the minister will be able to come and receive the award in person at Jakarta Theater on 24th of August.
It's such an achievement to have that award, definitely.
Yes.
24th of August. So one last thing, is this summit going to be open for public, and how can we attend the summit?
It's open for public. If you're ever interested in climate, or if you have zero knowledge about climate at all, but you're willing to learn, just come to our website. It's on fpciclimate.org, and then you can sign yourself up there. It's completely free of charge. Everyone is welcome, whether you're a climate skeptic or you're a climate hero.
Oh, I love that. A skeptic and a hero all together, right?
Correct.
Yes. Esther Tamara, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for doing your part. And definitely Indonesia Net-Zero Summit 2024 will definitely make a difference for our nation and also for the people of Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol and Rolfie, for having me.
And hopefully the Climate Avengers will assemble.
That's right. We will have more interesting stories right after the break, so stay tuned right here on The C Morning Show. We'll be right back.